TikTok wants to use the same algorithm, does ByteDance have to sell it? You might be wondering how the Supreme Court thinks about that issue. We heard oral argument this morning. I think the question that the Supreme Court seems to frame this, the way the Supreme Court seems to frame this, is that this law targets TikTok's algorithm versus TikTok's content. And TikTok's algorithm is ByteDance's content. It's ByteDance's speech. And ByteDance is not an American citizen. So even if it is ByteDance's speech and this law targets their algorithm, ByteDance doesn't get the same protection as an American citizen would, or even an American company. A response to this was offered by Jeff Fisher during the oral argument by way of an analogy. Imagine instead of ByteDance, it's Friedrich Engels, and instead of their algorithm, it's the Communist Manifesto. If the United States government went out and banned all the publishers and distributors of the Communist Manifesto, all copies, it would still be an unconstitutional violation. It would still be unconstitutional. It doesn't matter if the producer of that speech was foreign. I think Jeff Fisher's analogy kind of falls short because an algorithm is a little bit more than simply the priorities of ByteDance. An algorithm is an active editor. And so I think a more apt analogy would be to say, imagine a newspaper hires as their editor-in-chief, say, a Tier 2 Soviet Union Communist Party official. And if Congress banned that type of behavior, presumably the American public and the legal system would say, yeah, that's perfectly within Congress's power to do. This case can be reframed in a whole bunch of different ways. The analogies are tough. For example, during oral argument, Ketanji Brown-Jackson brought up, hey, isn't this more of an association case? ByteDance, again, non-American citizen, so it's not speech that we're targeting here, but it's kind of the association between an American company, American consumers of an American company, and a foreign company. So shouldn't the precedents we apply here be absolutely different than the ones we were given? So that's the way I think the Supreme Court will decide. I think they will decide 8-1 that ByteDance does not get First Amendment protections, and so this law doesn't need any extra scrutiny. I think the dissent will be Neil Gorsuch. His idea was that this law was targeting TikTok's content. And the way they addressed TikTok's content was by targeting TikTok's principal vendor, the vendor of their algorithm, ByteDance. And it's kind of like a fruit from the poison tree argument. This law doesn't pass muster. It's really kind of unconstitutional at its core. That said, they could do what President-elect Trump said he wanted in an amicus brief and delay the case into his administration. Maybe because the case was so complicated, maybe they need more time. They can find justifications, any justification they want to, frankly, but I think 3 are most likely. 1, they could say, hey, we actually need some more testimony on how much control ByteDance actually has over TikTok. You say TikTok would resist this type of control, but would they successfully resist? Can they successfully resist? Another question is how much access to American data does ByteDance actually have? They've used it to investigate journalists. Do they use it to improve their algorithm? Presumably they don't have a bunch of engineers just watching the front end of American TikTok. How does that actually work? Another way they could delay it is by just saying, hey, we think it's actually kind of trivial for TikTok to use another algorithm produced by a company that isn't owned by China. We think they could just replace their algorithm, but you say it would be immensely complicated and difficult. There's some magic to it. Maybe we need more testimony to establish how hard it would be for TikTok to actually do this. So again, the Supreme Court has some ways to delay it if they feel like they don't want to work through the weekend and work through the next week. Nearly everyone on the court and our Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar expressed strong national security concerns about companies in charge of something like this algorithm. And I think there's some merit in that, but that really requires more thought, and the Supreme Court wasn't willing to have that thought. And I think there's 2 main ways my thinking goes on this. 1, an algorithm is a little bit different than a simple editor in the sense that its financial rewards, its remuneration, is directly related to how well you please the algorithm. And so it provides this incentive for content, certain types of content, certain word choice, that really makes an algorithm a little bit more threatening than even the Communist Manifesto. Furthermore, an algorithm that draws someone down a rabbit hole of content, that makes someone fall down a rabbit hole of content surrounded in the deep, dark depths of it, acts a little different on public discourse than one that wants people to go from term to term, to organically search up these topics, to actually use their curiosity to learn more. It has a different level of acceleration. And those two subjects, the Supreme Court did not even want to touch. It seems like they really don't think either they have the expertise or the time to decide the case in this way. Hopefully I made this issue, this oral argument, clear to the layperson. Keep your eye on the oral arguments, though, because this month has a lot of very, very interesting Supreme Court cases to listen to. So stay tuned and follow if you feel so inclined.